The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent as the chief engineer of the Vreen finished his presentation. His six-fingered hands gestured at the holographic display, showing complex equations and simulations. And so, esteemed colleagues, I conclude that a planetary defense system capable of deflecting or neutralizing celestial bodies of Class 5 magnitude or greater is simply impossible. The energy requirements alone would exceed the total output of an average star system, not to mention the quantum instability issues we've documented in our 3-century study. The Vreen's skin shifted from confident blue to a smug purple. Around the circular table, representatives from 24 spacefaring civilizations nodded in agreement. The Orhan delegate, a being composed of crystalline structures, chimed in with a musical tone. Our scientists concur. The laws of physics do not bend to wishful thinking. We should focus on early detection and evacuation protocols instead. Captain Jack Miller sat quietly at the human section, the newest addition to the council. Earth had only gained membership 30 years ago, making humans the youngest species represented. He listened carefully, making notes on his datapad, while the aliens discussed theoretical limitations as if they were absolute law. Miller was no scientist. He was a military man chosen to represent Earth because of his calm demeanor and diplomatic skills. But something about the dismissive tone of the older species bothered him. Humanity hadn't survived its turbulent history by accepting limitations. Does the human representative have anything to add? The council moderator, a tall, willowy being, turned its attention to Miller. Standing up, Miller cleared his throat. Thank you, moderator. Earth appreciates the detailed analysis from our esteemed colleagues. We will study your findings with great interest. He sat down without elaborating further. No need to reveal Earth's plans just yet, especially when those plans weren't fully formed. The meeting with General Powell didn't go well. The holographic projection of Earth's defense chief looked grim as Miller finished his report. So they all agree it can't be done? Powell asked, her weathered face betraying concern. Unanimously, Miller replied. The Vreen were particularly insistent. Their civilization has been studying this problem for over 300 years. Powell's image flickered as she reached for something off-screen. Well, that's inconvenient timing. I've just received the latest data package from Deep Space Observatory 6. Miller's stomach tightened. How bad? It's confirmed. Object designation Doomfall is on a direct intercept course with our solar system. Initial measurements put it at approximately 300 kilometers in diameter, composed primarily of dense metals and ice. Current trajectory will bring it through the heart of our system in about 5 years. Evacuation plans? Miller asked, though he already knew the answer. With current technology, we could maybe save 10 million people out of 10 billion. Powell's voice was flat. And that's assuming we get help with transport ships from the council races. Miller leaned back in his chair, looking out the viewport of his quarters at the endless starfield. 5 years to solve a problem that apparently couldn't be solved. Send me everything we have on defense system concepts. Everything, even the crazy stuff that got rejected. There's no point, Jack. You heard the experts. It can't be done. Miller smiled thinly. They've never met humans under pressure. 2 weeks later, Miller stood in a vast underground facility beneath the Olympus Mons on Mars. Around him, Earth's best and brightest were assembling for what many already call a fool's errand. The room quieted as he stepped onto the small platform. No speeches had been prepared. There wasn't time for ceremony. You all know why you're here, Miller began, looking around at the assembled faces. In 5 years, an object large enough to end all life on Earth will tear through our solar system. The Galactic Council races have determined that stopping or deflecting such an object is impossible. He paused, letting that sink in. Our job is to prove them wrong. A murmur went through the crowd. Miller gestured to his right, where a tall, lanky man with disheveled hair and a woman with sharp eyes and a determined expression stood. This is Dr. Tom Reed, theoretical physicist, and Dr. Lisa Gray, materials scientist. They'll be leading our technical teams. The challenge before us has never been solved by any species in the galaxy. We have limited resources, limited time, and frankly, limited support from Earth's own government. Miller's eyes swept across the room. Many of you were chosen because you've proposed solutions that were rejected as too radical or unlikely to work. Now's your chance to prove your ideas have merit. From the back of the room, a voice called out, "What if they're right? What if it is impossible?" Miller nodded, acknowledging the fear behind the question. The word impossible has an interesting history on Earth. Flight was impossible until the Wright brothers. Splitting the atom was impossible until we did it. Landing on the moon, curing certain diseases, instant global communication, all impossible until humans made them possible. He stepped down from the platform. We have 5 years to do the impossible one more time. Let's get to work. 3 months into the project, the first major test failed spectacularly. The energy containment field collapsed, vaporizing the test equipment and nearly breaching the facility's safety shields. "Well, that approach is definitely off the table," Reed said, reviewing the data as emergency systems cleared the smoke from the chamber. Gray nodded, her fingers tracing through holographic material analysis. The quantum fluctuations were even more extreme than predicted. No material we can fabricate could withstand those forces. Miller watched them from the observation deck, joined by an unwelcome guest. The Vreen observer, sent by the Council to monitor their progress, made a sound like bubbling liquid, their version of laughter. "Captain Miller, my government appreciates your determination, but this effort remains futile. Perhaps now you will accept our offer of limited evacuation assistance." Miller didn't look at the alien. "Request declined. We're just getting started." Later that night, as most of the team slept, Miller found Reed still working, surrounded by floating equations. "Any insights?" Miller asked, offering coffee. Reed took the cup absently. "Maybe. The traditional approach using energy shields won't work. We knew that. But what if we don't try to stop it at all?" "Explain." "We've been thinking about this as a wall to stop a bullet," Reed said, eyes bright with new ideas. "But what if instead we create a path of least resistance, a way to guide Doomfall safely around Earth using gravity itself?" Miller considered this. "Can we manipulate gravity on that scale?" "Not directly. But if we positioned enough mass at precisely the right points." Reed's voice trailed off as he began running new simulations. For the first time since learning about Doomfall, Miller felt a spark of genuine hope. As humanity had done countless times before, they weren't accepting the impossible. They were redefining the problem. The race against time had truly begun. The Martian sunrise cast long shadows across the expanded facility that now sprawled across the red planet's surface. What had begun as a small underground base had grown into a complex of domes, testing areas, and makeshift living quarters. Earth's last hope was taking physical form. Tom Reed stood at the main viewport, dark circles under his eyes, watching as massive construction robots positioned the first full-scale gravity lens array. The structure looked deceptively simple, a series of concentric rings supporting what appeared to be ordinary metal plates. "Those aren't just metal, you know," said Lisa Gray, joining him at the window. She handed him a steaming cup of coffee. "Each panel contains layers of the new composite, billions of precisely arranged particles that can bend gravitational waves when energized." Reed nodded tiredly. "If it works." "It has to work," she replied simply. Behind them, the command center buzzed with activity. Teams of engineers monitored construction progress, while scientists ran simulation after simulation. Captain Miller moved between groups, checking status reports and offering encouragement where needed. The Vreen observer, who had taken to calling himself Smith for the humans' convenience, watched it all with undisguised skepticism. "Your species continues to impress with its determination, if not its wisdom," Smith said as Miller approached. "My government has analyzed your latest designs. They remain unconvinced." Miller shrugged. Then why are 3 more observer ships on their way here? Smith's skin rippled with surprise, a reaction he couldn't hide. Merely scientific curiosity. Or maybe they're starting to wonder if we're onto something, Miller suggested with a slight smile. Your scientists have requested our material composition data twice now. Smith made no reply, but his skin darkened to a deep blue, the Vreen equivalent of discomfort. 2 months later, disaster struck. During the first power-up test of the gravity lens array, a calibration error caused a resonance cascade. The energy buildup tore through the testing grounds, destroying equipment worth billions and killing 2 engineers who couldn't evacuate in time. The funeral was brief. There wasn't time for extended mourning. But the loss hit the team hard. Reed took it especially poorly, locking himself in his lab for 3 days afterward. Miller found him there, surrounded by broken equipment and discarded calculations. The Vreen were right, Reed said without looking up. We can't control gravitational forces precisely enough. The more power we add, the more unstable the system becomes. Miller leaned against a workbench. So we need a new approach. Reed laughed bitterly. A new approach? We've tried 7 major design concepts already. Earth invested everything in this project, and I've got nothing to show for it, but 2 dead colleagues. We knew the risks. Stop, Reed cut him off. Just stop with the motivational speeches. This isn't a movie where humanity triumphs through sheer willpower. Sometimes physics just says no. Miller waited a moment before responding. My grandfather was on the first Mars colony mission. Did I ever tell you that? Reed rubbed his eyes. What does that have to do with anything? Their life support systems failed 2 weeks into the mission. Everyone said they were dead. No way to fix it with the supplies they had. The NASA director even prepared a speech announcing the tragedy. Miller walked to the shattered remains of a prototype, picking up a broken piece. But my grandfather refused to accept that. He rigged up a system using parts from their spacesuits that kept them alive until help arrived. The mission that was supposed to fail became the foundation of everything we've built on Mars. Nice story, Reed said. But it's not just a story, it's how humans operate. We don't accept limitations when our survival depends on breaking them. Miller set the broken piece down carefully. Take a shower, get some sleep. Then I want you to look at the problem differently. Stop trying to control gravity directly. Reed was about to argue when the door hissed open. Lisa Gray entered, holding a data tablet. You should see this, she said, handing the tablet to Reed. It just came through from that underground research team in Europe. Reed's eyes widened as he scrolled through the data. This changes everything. What is it? Miller asked. They've managed to create quantum entanglement between graviton particles. Gray explained. It means we could potentially create a distributed network effect instead of trying to generate all the force from a single point. For the first time in days, Reed's face showed a flicker of hope. A single lens can't handle the power requirements, but what if we built multiple smaller lenses that work together? The news from Earth grew worse each month. Public panic about doomfall led to social unrest. Some religious groups declared it divine punishment. Others formed end-of-the-world cults. The global economy struggled as people questioned the point of long-term investments. Meanwhile, the Martian facility became the center of unexpected diplomatic activity. The Orhan sent their own observers, crystalline beings who watched the humans work with growing interest. Even the reclusive Telari, masters of gravitational technology, dispatched a scientific team. They're hedging their bets, Miller explained to his team during a rare moment of relaxation in the base's small recreation area. No one believes we'll succeed, but they want to be first in line if we do. Speaking of betting against us, Gray said, nodding toward the entrance where a tall, distinguished-looking man in an expensive suit entered, flanked by security. Here comes trouble. James Wilson, Earth's Treasury Secretary, had become the project's most vocal opponent. He approached their table with a tight smile. Captain Miller, a word, please. Miller excused himself and followed Wilson to a private corner. "The Security Council has voted," Wilson said without preamble. "Project Doomfall is being scaled back by 60%, effective immediately." Miller stared at him in disbelief. "We're making real progress. The distributed lens concept is working in small-scale tests. We just need more money, more resources, more time," Wilson finished for him. "The same thing you've been saying for 2 years now. Meanwhile, Earth needs those resources for evacuation planning." "Evacuation is surrender," Miller said firmly. "And it won't save most of humanity." Wilson's expression hardened. "That's not your decision to make. You have 1 month to show concrete results, or we shut you down completely." After Wilson left, Miller gathered his core team. He explained the situation bluntly, holding nothing back. "So that's where we stand. 1 month to prove this can work." The room was silent until Reed stood up, a strange smile on his face. "You know what? This might be exactly what we need." "Budget cuts and a deadline?" Gray asked incredulously. Reed shook his head. "No, being forced to think smaller." He activated the room's holographic display, showing their current design. "We've been trying to build something massive enough to affect Doomfall directly. But what if instead we build something small enough to deploy in large numbers?" He manipulated the display, breaking their design into hundreds of smaller units. Microlenses working in perfect synchronization across the entire solar system. Each one barely affects space-time on its own, but together. Miller studied the new concept, hope rising in his chest. "How quickly can we prototype this?" Reed glanced at Gray, who was already running calculations. She looked up with determination in her eyes. 2 weeks for the first test unit. 3 more for a small network demonstration. Miller nodded. "Then we have exactly enough time to save the world." As the team dispersed to begin work on the new approach, Miller noticed Smith, the Vreen observer, watching from the doorway. For once, the alien skin wasn't showing skepticism or amusement. It had turned a deep, thoughtful green. Perhaps even the aliens were starting to believe. The prototype microlens hovered in the testing chamber, a deceptively simple-looking disc barely 2 meters across. It rotated slowly, catching the light and reflecting it in strange patterns that seemed to bend at impossible angles. "Power at 20%, announced Gray, her fingers dancing across the control panel. The room hummed with energy as the device began to glow faintly. Reed watched the readings intently. Gravitational field holding steady. Quantum entanglement nominal. 30%. Miller stood back, arms crossed, trying to project confidence he didn't entirely feel. 3 weeks of non-stop work had produced this first functional microlens, but they needed thousands to make their plan work. And time was running out. 40%, Gray called. The hum intensified. Smith, the Vreen, and representatives from 4 other alien species watched from behind shielded glass. Their presence no longer felt like skeptical observation. There was genuine interest now. 50% power. A small alarm began to sound. Reed quickly adjusted settings on his console. Minor fluctuation in the quantum field. Compensating. "Should we hold here?" asked Gray. Reed shook his head. "We need to know if it can handle full power." Continue. 60%. The lens was now surrounded by a visible distortion, like heat waves rising from hot pavement, but more pronounced. Scientific instruments around the chamber began to give erratic readings. 70%. The alarm grew louder. Reed's hands moved frantically over the controls. Field instability increasing. Adjusting calibration. Miller stepped forward. "Reed, if we need to abort." "Just a little more," Reed insisted. "The theory says this should work." 80%. The microlens began to vibrate. Small objects in the room, pens, tablets, coffee cups, started to drift upward, as if gravity itself was becoming confused. Gravitational anomaly forming. Gray shouted over the noise. "It's working." For a brief moment, triumph flashed across Reed's face. Then the readings spiked dramatically. Entanglement breaking down. Cut power now. Grace slammed her hand on the emergency shutdown, but it was too late. The microlens shattered with a sound like thunder, releasing a pulse of energy that knocked everyone off their feet. Emergency shields activated instantly, containing most of the blast, but the testing chamber was destroyed. As the alarms blared and emergency teams rushed in, Miller helped Reed to his feet. The scientist's face was blank with shock. "I don't understand," Reed whispered. "It should have worked." 7 broken ribs, 13 concussions, and equipment worth billions destroyed. James Wilson's holographic form paced in Miller's office later that day. "The Security Council has seen enough, Captain. Project Doomfall is terminated, effective immediately." Miller leaned forward. "We were close. The microlens created an actual gravitational anomaly before it failed. That's further than anyone's ever gotten." "Close isn't good enough when Earth has only 3 years left," Wilson replied coldly. "The evacuation program needs those resources. I'm sending transport ships to return your team to Earth." After the transmission ended, Miller sat alone in the darkened office. For the first time since the project began, doubt crept into his mind. What if the Vreen and others were right? What if some problems truly were unsolvable? A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Smith, the Vreen, stood in the doorway. "I monitored your conversation with your government," the alien said without apology. "Your species can be remarkably short-sighted." Miller laughed bitterly. Coming to gloat, Smith, finally proven right about impossible tasks. The Vreen's skin shifted to a color Miller had never seen before, a deep, reflective gold. "On the contrary, I came to offer help." The next morning, Miller called an emergency meeting of the core team. Reed looked terrible, having not slept since the disaster. Gray's arm was in a sling from injuries sustained in the blast. Several chairs remained empty. Team members already departed for Earth. "I'll be direct," Miller began. "Earth has pulled our funding. Officially, Project Doomfall is over." Murmurs of defeat spread through the room. "However," Miller continued, "we've received an unexpected offer." He nodded to Smith, who stood in the corner. The Vreen stepped forward. "My government has authorized me to provide certain technical assistance." Astonishment rippled through the room. Reed sat up straighter. "Why would the Vreen help us now?" "Your failed test yesterday was not a complete failure," Smith explained. "You achieved gravitational manipulation at a smaller scale than any species has before. The principle is sound, even if your implementation was flawed." "The flaw was in the quantum entanglement matrix," Gray said, wincing as she shifted her injured arm. "We couldn't maintain field coherence above 80% power." Smith nodded. "Precisely. The Vreen faced a similar problem 3 centuries ago. We eventually abandoned the research as impractical. But your approach, using distributed microlenses, might overcome the limitations we encountered." Reed's eyes narrowed. "So now you believe it's possible?" "I believe that the probability has risen from effectively 0 to approximately 8%, Smith replied. "That is sufficient interest for my government to invest resources." Miller took over. "The Vreen aren't the only ones. The Orhan and Talari have also offered technical support. Between them, they can replace our Earth funding, at least enough to continue basic research." Hope flickered across exhausted faces, but Reed shook his head. "It won't be enough," he said flatly. "Even with alien help, we'd need hundreds of engineers to build enough microlenses in time. And most of our team is already leaving." The room fell silent. Miller looked at each remaining face, seeing defeat setting in. "Tom," he said finally, "when you were explaining your breakthrough to me last month, you mentioned something about natural amplifiers." Reed frowned. "Natural gravitational lenses, yes. Massive objects already create gravitational fields. In theory, we could use those to amplify our artificial effects. But could we use the moon?" Miller interrupted. The question hung in the air. Reed and Gray exchanged glances. The moon is massive enough, Gray said slowly, if we position microlenses at specific points around it. Reed's eyes widened as he began to understand. We wouldn't need thousands of devices, maybe only dozens, strategically placed. He turned to Smith. Does VREEN technology include precision lunar mapping? Smith's skin rippled with interest. It does, and the Tellari excel at gravitational calculation. For the first time in days, Reed smiled. Then maybe, just maybe, we have a chance. Miller stood up. I need volunteers to stay. This won't be sanctioned by Earth. You won't be paid. And if we fail, we might be stranded on Mars when doomfall hits. One by one, hands raised around the room. Not everyone. Some had families to return to, but enough to keep the core team intact. As the meeting broke up, Miller approached Reed privately. Can this really work, using the moon? Reed looked him directly in the eyes. I don't know, but it's the best impossible idea we have left. Miller nodded. Then let's make it happen. Outside the window, the red Martian landscape stretched to the horizon. Barren, hostile, unforgiving. But somewhere out there, humanity's last hope was taking a new form. The Earth hung like a blue jewel against the blackness of space, unaware of its potential doom. From the observation deck of the makeshift command station orbiting the moon, the planet looked peaceful, normal. Captain Miller knew better. In the 18 months since Project Doomfall went underground, Earth had changed dramatically. Most governments had shifted resources to evacuation programs. The lucky few chosen to escape had begun training. Everyone else tried to live normally while carrying the weight of an extinction-level event on the horizon. Beautiful view, said a voice behind him. Lisa Gray joined him at the viewport, her previously injured arm now fully healed. Makes you remember what we're fighting for. Miller nodded. How's the deployment going? 12 microlenses successfully positioned on the far side. Gray handed him a tablet showing a map of the lunar surface with glowing dots marking each installation. The Tellari engineers finished calibrating the southern cluster yesterday. They're actually ahead of schedule. That's the first bit of good news I've heard all week, Miller replied. The door hissed open, and Reed entered, followed by Smith the VREEN and a tall, crystalline Orhan whose name translated roughly as Shining Mind. We need to talk, Reed said, his expression grave. Miller sighed. More problems? Potentially catastrophic ones, Smith confirmed, his skin a worry purple. They gathered around the central holographic display where Reed called up the latest simulation data. We've run 20 consecutive simulations with the current configuration, Reed explained. In 19 of them, we successfully deflect doomfall away from Earth. That sounds promising, Miller said cautiously. What's the problem? The Orhan's crystalline form vibrated, creating a musical tone that the translator converted. The path of deflection is the problem. In 15 scenarios, doomfall would be redirected toward Mars. In the remaining 4, it would damage or destroy Venus. Miller frowned. So we save Earth but doom Mars. That's not acceptable. Agreed, said Reed. We need to find a deflection path that safely routes doomfall out of the solar system entirely. Can we do that with our current setup? Miller asked. Reed shook his head. Not enough control. We need at least 4 more microlens clusters, specifically positioned to create a gravitational corridor that will guide doomfall safely past all planets. Miller rubbed his temples. How long would that take to build and deploy? Gray checked calculations on her tablet. With our current resources, 8 months, minimum. Doomfall arrives in 6, Miller reminded them. Silence fell over the group. They'd come so far, working in secret with alien allies, building technology no one believed possible. To fall short now seemed unthinkable. Smith's skin shifted to a thoughtful green. There may be another way. The VREEN have 3 deep space construction ships currently in the Proxima system. If I can convince my government of the urgency. Do it, Miller said immediately. Whatever it takes. As Smith left to contact his government, the Orhan approached Miller. Its crystalline body refracted light in complex patterns that somehow conveyed emotion. You should know, the translator rendered its musical tones, that many on the council now speak of humans with new respect. Your species has accomplished in 3 years what others deemed impossible after centuries of study. Miller smiled tiredly. Let's hope it's enough. 2 weeks later, a fleet of alien vessels entered Earth orbit, causing panic until world governments issued emergency broadcasts explaining their friendly purpose. The sight of Vreen, Orhan, and even Telluri ships working alongside the remnants of Earth's space fleet became a symbol of hope. In a hastily arranged video call, James Wilson confronted Miller from his bunker deep beneath Washington, D.C. "You went behind the council's back," Wilson accused, entered into unauthorized agreements with alien powers, continued a project that was officially terminated. "Yes," Miller admitted simply. Wilson's anger seemed to deflate in the face of Miller's calm. "Will it work? Really work?" "We have a 78% probability of success now," Miller replied. "The additional lens clusters are being deployed as we speak." Wilson shook his head in disbelief. "The aliens are saying you've revolutionized gravitational physics, that this technology will change interstellar travel forever." "That wasn't our goal. We just wanted to save Earth." "If you succeed," Wilson said quietly, "you'll be heroes. If you fail—" Miller finished the thought. "If we fail, there won't be anyone left to blame us." With 1 month remaining before Doomfall's arrival, the full network was finally deployed. 24 microlens clusters strategically positioned around the Moon and at key points throughout the solar system. Each cluster contained dozens of individual lenses, all quantum entangled to work as a single system. The command center, once a makeshift facility, had evolved into an impressive operation with teams of humans and aliens working side by side. The central chamber buzzed with activity as final checks were conducted. Reed stood at the main control station, reviewing diagnostics with Gray and a team of alien engineers. His once disheveled appearance had given way to focused intensity. "Power systems check complete," Gray announced. "All clusters reporting optimal levels. Quantum entanglement synchronized," added a Telluri engineer, its voice like distant thunder. "Field stability at 99.7%. Reed nodded, satisfied. "Begin final calibration sequence." As the system powered up for its pre-deployment test, Miller felt the weight of humanity's future on his shoulders. In a matter of weeks, they would know if their impossible project had succeeded. Smith joined him, watching the flurry of activity. "Your species continues to surprise us, Captain Miller. Even now, some on the council believe this will fail." "What do you believe?" Miller asked. Smith's skin turned a reflective silver, a color Miller had learned indicated respect. "I believe humans have a gift for defying expectations." The test proceeded smoothly until the power reached 90%. Then alarms began to sound. "Energy fluctuation in the primary control cluster," Gray called out. "Compensating." Reed's hands flew over the controls. "Lock it down. We can't risk damage this close to deployment." The system stabilized, but Reed's expression remained troubled as he examined the readings. "What happened?" Miller demanded. "The power load is pushing the quantum entanglement to its limits," Reed explained. "We can maintain stability up to 90%, but Doomfall will require 100% power, possibly more." The Orhan engineer chimed in, its crystals flashing with concern. "If entanglement fails during the actual event, the entire network could collapse," Reed finished grimly. Miller looked around the room at the mixed team of humans and aliens who had worked tirelessly to build the impossible. "Options." After a moment of silence, Gray stepped forward. "We need someone at each major cluster to monitor and manually adjust the quantum fields if necessary." "That would mean positioning teams throughout the solar system," Reed pointed out. "And if the system fails catastrophically," the implication was clear. "Anyone positioned at the clusters would be at ground zero if the gravitational fields collapsed. Miller straightened his shoulders. I'll take the primary control cluster. Reed, you coordinate from here. Gray asked for volunteers for the other positions, humans and aliens alike. Reed started to object, but Miller cut him off. This is what we've been working for. We take the risk together. As Miller left to prepare, Smith followed him into the corridor. My government has authorized me to assist at one of the secondary clusters, the Vreen said. It seems I've developed what humans call investment in this project. Miller smiled. Welcome to the team, Smith. In the final days before Doomfall's arrival, ships departed for positions throughout the solar system, carrying the brave few who would manually monitor the network during its most critical test. News of their mission spread across Earth, uniting a planet that had grown increasingly divided as doom approached. For the first time since the project began, people dared to hope. Miller took his position at the primary control cluster orbiting the moon. From his viewport, he could see Earth, still beautiful, still alive. In the opposite direction, though still too distant to see, Doomfall approached. His communication console lit up with Reed's voice. All stations report ready, Captain. Doomfall enters activation range in 6 hours. Miller took a deep breath. Acknowledged. Begin final countdown sequence. The moment of truth was almost upon them. The silence of space enveloped Captain Jack Miller as he made final adjustments to the control panel. Through the viewport of his small command module orbiting the moon, Earth hummed like a fragile blue marble against the blackness. From this distance, there was no sign of the panic gripping humanity, just serene beauty that made everything they had worked for seem even more important. Primary cluster powered to standby mode, Miller reported. All systems nominal. In the Lunar Command Center, Tom Reed acknowledged the report. His normally disheveled appearance had given way to rigid focus as he coordinated the most ambitious engineering project in human history. Copy that, Captain. All stations report ready, Reed replied. His voice sounded strained but steady. Doomfall has crossed Mars orbit. Estimated time to activation threshold, 43 minutes. Around the solar system, 23 other stations maintain similar vigils, each monitoring a critical cluster of microlenses that together formed humanity's last defense. At 8 of those stations, alien engineers from 3 different species worked alongside humans, a cooperation unprecedented in galactic history. Lisa Gray's voice came through from her position at the Venus cluster, quantum entanglement holding at 99.8% across the network. Better than we hoped for. A series of acknowledgments followed as each station reported status. Last came Smith the Vreen, positioned at a critical junction where the gravitational field would need to be most precisely controlled. Jupiter cluster online, Smith said, his translated voice calm. My team is prepared for manual adjustments if needed. Reed took a deep breath. Thank you all. Remember your training. If quantum entanglement begins to fail, do not attempt heroics. Follow emergency protocols and evacuate if the field becomes unstable. Miller smiled grimly at that. Everyone knew evacuation might be impossible if things went wrong. They had all accepted that risk. The minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness. Regular status checks punctuated the silence as Doomfall, still invisible to the naked eye, but blazing clearly on their sensors, approached the activation boundary. T-5 minutes, Reed announced, initiating power-up sequence. Throughout the solar system, the microlens clusters began to glow with energy, drawing power from massive batteries that had taken months to charge. On Earth, power grids dimmed as the final reserves were channeled to the system. 20% power. Miller watched his instruments carefully. So far, everything was running perfectly. 40% power. A slight tremor ran through his module as the gravitational field began to form. Small objects inside the cabin, a pen, a water pouch, drifted subtly toward the viewport facing the nearest microlens cluster. 60% power. Warning lights flashed on Miller's console. Minor fluctuation in the primary field. Compensating. All stations, status check, Reed demanded. One by one, they reported in. All holding steady. 80% power. Miller felt it now. A strange sensation like being simultaneously pushed and pulled in directions that didn't quite align with normal space. The microlenses were warping gravity itself, creating a corridor that would guide Doomfall safely away from Earth. 90% power. Alarms sounded across the network as quantum entanglement began to fluctuate. Miller's hands moved quickly over his controls, making dozens of minute adjustments. Entanglement holding, but strained. Gray reported, "We won't maintain stability much longer." Doomfall approaching activation boundary, Reed announced. 1 minute to full power requirement. Miller took a deep breath. "Ready when you are, Reed." "All stations prepare for final power surge," Reed ordered. "Full power in 3, 2, 1. 100% power." The effect was immediate and dramatic. Miller's module shook violently as space itself seemed to twist around him. Outside his viewport, stars appeared to move, their light bent by the immense gravitational forces being generated. Gravitational corridor forming. Gray shouted over the communication system, "It's working." Then, without warning, the primary communication network failed. Every screen in Miller's module went dark. The backup systems activated seconds later, but they showed only local data, no connection to the greater network. "Reed? Gray? Anyone copy?" Miller called, but received only static in response. Alone in his module, with only basic instruments functioning, Miller continued making adjustments based on pre-calculated parameters. Through his viewport, he watched as the microlenses glowed with impossible energy, creating visible distortions in space. Then he saw it, a dark shape against the stars, moving incredibly fast. Doomfall had arrived. The massive object, over 300 kilometers across, entered the gravitational corridor with terrifying speed. For a heartbeat, Miller feared it would simply plow through their defenses, but then he saw it begin to shift, its trajectory bending as it followed the path they had created. The module's systems went haywire. Power fluctuated wildly as the gravitational forces intensified beyond anything their simulations had predicted. Miller worked frantically to maintain field stability, even as the module creaked and groaned around him. Through the viewport, Doomfall passed frighteningly close to the moon, close enough that Miller could see its cratered metallic surface in stark detail. For a moment, it seemed to hesitate in its new course, as if fighting against the gravitational corridor. Miller diverted emergency power to his cluster, pushing it beyond safety limits. The module's temperature soared as systems overloaded. Warning messages flashed across his screen, but he ignored them. "Come on," he whispered, "just a little farther." As if hearing his plea, Doomfall continued along the corridor, its path now clearly bending away from Earth. Miller watched, scarcely daring to breathe, as the massive object accelerated past the moon and began its journey outward from the solar system. Then darkness fell as all systems, even emergency power, failed completely. 3 days passed with no communication from any of the stations positioned throughout the solar system. On Earth, billions watched their skies with a mixture of hope and dread. Had Doomfall been diverted? Had the brave teams at each cluster survived? No one knew. In the Lunar Command Center, Reed refused to leave his post despite exhaustion. Hour after hour, he sent signals to each station, hoping for a response. On the 4th day, as hope began to fade, a faint transmission reached the lunar base. "This is Captain Miller, primary cluster." The voice was weak, broken by static. "Repeat, Miller, survived." Reed leaped to his console. "Jack, do you copy? What happened? Did it work?" After a long pause, "It worked, Tom." Doomfall passed through, heading out of the system. Another pause, then stronger. "We did it." One by one, other stations began reporting in. Some had suffered severe damage. 3 were lost completely. But the news spread quickly. Doomfall had been successfully diverted. Earth was saved. 6 weeks later, Miller stood before the Galactic Council, now as Earth's official representative. The chamber, once filled with skeptical aliens, now buzzed with excitement and respect. The council moderator addressed the assembly. For the first time in recorded history, a planetary defense system has successfully diverted a Class 5 celestial body. What was deemed impossible has been achieved through unprecedented cooperation between species. Miller looked around at the alien faces, some familiar, some strange. Smith the Vreen sat with his delegation, his skin shimmering with the gold color of respect. Captain Miller, the moderator continued, the Council formally requests access to this technology for the benefit of all spacefaring civilizations. Miller stepped forward. Earth will gladly share our knowledge, with a condition. This technology must be used for defense only, never as a weapon. We propose establishing a galactic defense initiative, with all member species contributing equally. The chamber erupted in discussion. Such an arrangement was unprecedented. As the debate continued, Reed and Gray joined Miller in a quiet corner. They'll agree, Gray predicted. They need this technology too badly to refuse. Reed nodded, and humanity has proven its worth. We're no longer the newcomers begging for a seat at the table. Miller looked out at the stars visible through the council chamber's vast windows. Somewhere out there, Doomfall continued its journey into deep space, deflected by human determination and ingenuity. You know what I keep thinking about, Miller said. That first meeting, when they all said it couldn't be done. Reed smiled. Next time someone says something's impossible, we'll say we've heard that before, Miller finished. Beyond the windows, the galaxy stretched endlessly, filled with challenges that awaited a species that refused to accept limitations, a species that had proven, once and for all, that the impossible was merely waiting to be achieved.
The mining ship Prospect floated in the empty darkness of space. Inside, Captain Jack Reynolds looked at the stars through the main window. His crew of 3 people and 1 AI had spent 6 months collecting ore from asteroids. They were tired and ready to go home. 3 more weeks, Jack said to himself. His voice echoed in the quiet control room. He ran a hand through his short gray hair and checked the ship's course one more time. Behind him, the door slid open with a soft hiss. Ellie, the communications officer, walked in with 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Jack. "Thanks," he said, taking a sip of the hot drink. "Anything new?" Ellie shook her head. Her red hair was tied back in a simple ponytail. "All systems normal. Marcus is checking the ore containers. Tom is doing his security rounds." Jack nodded. It was a normal day on the Prospect, until it wasn't. Loud beep came from Ellie's station. She walked over quickly and looked at the screen. "Captain, I'm picking up a signal," she said, her fingers moving across the controls. Jack put down his coffee. "What kind of signal?" "I'm not sure. It's not human." Ellie's eyes widened. It's a distress call." Jack moved to her side. The signal pattern on the screen was unlike anything he had seen before. "Are you sure?" "Universal distress patterns are the same everywhere," Ellie said. "This is definitely a call for help. But it's coming from so far away that we shouldn't even be able to receive it." Jack pressed a button on the wall. "Marcus, Tom, come to the control room. Navi, analyze this signal." The ship's AI responded immediately. Its calm voice came from speakers in the ceiling. "Analyzing. Signal origin is approximately 2 light days from our position. The technology used to send this signal is far beyond current human capabilities." 5 minutes later, the whole crew was in the control room. Marcus, the ship's engineer, was a big man with dark skin and strong hands from years of fixing machines. Tom, the security officer, was shorter but solid, with watchful eyes that missed nothing. "Play the message," Jack ordered. A strange sound filled the room. It wasn't a language they knew, but somehow they could feel the fear in it. The sound ended with a series of coordinates. "That's impossible," Marcus said, crossing his arms. No signal should be able to reach us from that distance, not without massive power. What do we do, Captain? Tom asked, his hand resting near his sidearm out of habit. Jack looked at each of his crew members. What do you think? Marcus shook his head. We ignore it and go home. Our mission is done. Whatever that is, it's not our problem. Space law says we must help ships in trouble, Ellie countered. If that's a distress call, we have to respond. Tom shrugged. It could be a trap. Or it could be real, hard to know. And Navi, if we change course to check this out, how much time will it add to our journey? Jack asked. Minimum 2 weeks, Captain, the AI replied. That's assuming we don't stay to help. If repairs are needed, it could be longer. Jack was quiet for a moment. Then he straightened his back. Set course for those coordinates, Navi. We're going to check it out. Marcus groaned. Captain, we're not equipped for first contact. We're not making first contact, Jack said. We're answering a call for help. There's a difference. For 3 days, the prospect moved toward the signal's origin. The crew prepared, as best they could. Ellie studied the message, trying to understand the strange language. Marcus checked their supplies to see what they could spare for repairs. Tom made sure all weapons were ready, just in case. We're approaching the coordinates, Navi announced on the 4th day. Unknown object ahead. On the main screen, they saw it for the first time. It was massive, at least 20 times larger than the prospect. The alien ship looked like nothing they had ever seen. It seemed almost alive, with a smooth, white surface that reminded Jack of bones. Crystal-like structures grew from its sides, catching the light of a distant star, but parts of the ship were damaged. Dark holes marked its surface, and a strange blue substance leaked into space like blood. It's wounded, Ellie whispered. Scans show the ship is made of materials not in our database, Navi reported. The blue substance appears to be some kind of energy rather than liquid. Are there life forms aboard? Jack asked. Yes. Approximately 200. Life signs are different from human norms. Ellie, can you establish contact? She nodded and sent a simple message in multiple formats. They waited. The answer came quickly. The main screen flickered, and then they saw them. Aliens. They were tall and thin, with skin that seemed almost see-through. They had 2 arms and legs like humans, but their faces were very different. They had large, almond-shaped eyes that glowed with inner light. No nose, just 2 small breathing holes, no visible ears. Their mouths were small and didn't move when they spoke. One stepped forward. Its voice came through the speakers, now translated by Navy into English. We are the Lumini. I am Tarl, captain of this vessel. We thank you for answering our call. Jack stepped forward. I am Captain Jack Reynolds of the mining vessel Prospect. How can we help you? Our ship was attacked, Tarl said. We escaped, but our drive system is damaged. We lack the materials to repair it. Who attacked you? Tom asked. The alien was quiet for a moment. They are called the Void by many species. They hunt. They consume. They cannot be reasoned with. Why did they attack you? Jack asked. The Lumini are peaceful explorers. We have traveled the stars for thousands of years, but the Void does not care. They attack any advanced ship they find. Marcus stepped forward. I'm the engineer. I can look at your systems, see what you need. We would be grateful, Tarl said. We can offer technology in exchange for your help. We have much that would benefit your species. Jack nodded. We'll send a team to your ship. Prepare a docking area if you can. After the screen went dark, Tom moved closer to Jack. Captain, something doesn't feel right. They're hiding something. I agree, Jack said. But they need help and we're going to give it. Just stay alert. What the humans didn't know was that the Lumini were indeed hiding something important. In their desperation, they had used what humans would later call the death word, a form of quantum communication that could cross vast distances instantly. But using it came with a terrible price. In their control room, Tarl spoke quietly to his second-in-command. Did they detect our use of the forbidden signal? No, the other Lumini replied. Their technology is too primitive to understand what we did. Good. They must not know that we have brought the Void's attention to their species as well. The humans seem capable. Maybe they can help us use the weapon. And if they discover the truth? Tarl looked at the screen where the human ship floated tiny against the vastness of space. By then, it will be too late for all of us. The shuttle from the Prospect docked with the huge alien ship. Captain Jack led the team inside, along with Marcus and Tom. Ellie stayed behind to monitor communications. As the airlock opened, the humans stepped into a world they had never imagined. The corridors of the Lumini ship seemed alive. The walls glowed with soft blue light that moved like waves. The floor felt solid but somehow adjusted to their steps, making walking easier than it should be in the strange gravity. Amazing, Marcus whispered, looking around with wide eyes. His engineer's mind was trying to understand how everything worked. Tarl and two other Lumini were waiting for them. Up close, the aliens were even more strange. They stood nearly 7 feet tall, and their skin was so clear that Jack could see blue energy moving inside them like blood in veins. "Welcome to the Star Song," Tarl said, his voice coming from a small device on his chest that translated his words. "Please follow me." As they walked through the ship, the humans were silent with wonder. The Lumini technology was far beyond anything they had seen before. Doors opened without buttons. The gravity changed in different sections without any feeling of shift. Lights responded to thoughts rather than switches. "How old is your civilization?" Jack asked, trying to understand how advanced these beings were. "We have traveled the stars for over 20,000 of your Earth years," Tarl answered. "We were exploring space when your people were still making their first tools." They entered a large room that seemed to be the control center of the ship. Other Lumini worked at stations that had no visible controls. They simply moved their long fingers through the air and screens of light appeared and disappeared. "I need to see the damaged sections," Marcus said, holding up his toolkit. "I need to understand what needs to be fixed." Tarl nodded. "Of course, I will show you." He turned to Jack. "Captain, perhaps you would like to speak with our leaders while your engineer examines our ship." Jack looked at Tom. "Go with Marcus. Keep your eyes open." Tom nodded, understanding the unspoken message. "Look for anything suspicious." Marcus followed. Tarl and another Lumini engineer to the damaged part of the ship. What he saw there made him stop in shock. The hole in the ship's hull wasn't just broken, it looked eaten. The edges were dissolved, as if something had consumed the material itself. "What did this?" Marcus asked, touching the edge carefully. With a gloved hand, the Lumini engineer's light dimmed slightly, which Marcus would later learn was a sign of fear. The Void does not just attack, it feeds. It consumed this section of our ship. We sealed the breach, but the damage goes down to the molecular level. Our repair systems cannot fix it. Marcus scanned the area with his tools. The readings made no sense. This isn't just physical damage. The molecular structure is changed, like it was partially converted to something else. Meanwhile, Tom had wandered away from the repair team, pretending to be interested in the ship's structure. When no one was looking, he slipped down a side corridor, following his instincts. Something wasn't right about this situation, and he intended to find out what it was. He found a section of the ship that was heavily guarded by Lumini. Unlike the peaceful engineers, these Lumini carried weapons, long staffs that hummed with energy. Tom stayed hidden, watching as one guard passed a hand over a panel opening a hidden door. When the guards changed positions, Tom quickly moved forward and looked through the small window in the door. What he saw inside made his blood run cold. In the center of the room floated a sphere of what looked like pure darkness. It wasn't black. It was the absence of anything, a hole in reality itself. The sphere was contained in a field of energy, but Tom could feel its pull even from outside the room. Looking at it made his head hurt and his eyes water. He quickly took pictures with his portable scanner and sent them back to Navi on the Prospect for analysis. As he turned to leave, he found himself facing two Lumini guards. "Humans are not permitted in this area," one said coldly. Back in the control center, Jack was meeting with the Lumini leaders. They showed him star maps and explained their journey. Our homeworld is in a system far from here, an elder Lumini said. We were on a peaceful mission of exploration when the void found us. You mentioned this void before, Jack said. What exactly is it? The Lumini looked at each other, their lights pulsing in what seemed like a silent conversation. The void is ancient, Tarl finally said. They exist in the spaces between stars. They hunt advanced civilizations, consuming technology and energy. They cannot be reasoned with or stopped, only avoided. Then why were you targeted? Jack asked, noticing how the Lumini avoided answering directly. Before Tarl could answer, Jack's communicator beeped. It was Ellie from the Prospect. Captain, Navy has been analyzing the Lumini language and signals, she said, her voice tense. There's something you need to know. The communication method they use to contact us, Navy calls it a quantum entanglement signal. It can travel instantly across any distance. That explains how we receive their signal from so far away, Jack said. That's not all, Ellie continued. Navi says this technology is theoretical even for the most advanced human scientists. It breaks normal space rules. But the important part is this. Navy found references in the signal to something called a death word. Death word? Jack asked. Yes. It seems this quantum signal cuts through space-time in a way that attracts attention. Bad attention. Navy thinks the Lumini knew this when they sent it. Jack looked up at Tarl, who was watching him closely. Is this true? Did you know your distress call would bring danger to anyone who answered it? Before Tarl could answer, alarms began to sound throughout the ship. A Lumini rushed into the room, lights pulsing rapidly in panic. They have found us, the Lumini cried. The void approaches. On the main screen, space itself seemed to darken. Small points of absolute blackness appeared, moving toward their position faster than should be possible. How many? Tarl asked, his voice now without its usual calm. 3 ships, main vessel and 2 hunters. Jack grabbed his communicator. Tom, Marcus, get back to the shuttle now. Ellie, prepare the Prospect for immediate departure. Tarl placed a long-fingered hand on Jack's arm. You cannot escape them, Captain. No one can. They track the death word across galaxies. You knew, Jack said, understanding now. You knew they would follow your signal. You knew you were bringing this danger to whoever answered your call. Tarl's light dimmed. We were desperate. Our homeworld is already under attack by the void. We needed to find anyone advanced enough to help us use our last weapon. What weapon? Jack demanded. At that moment, Tom was brought in by the guards. Captain, they have some kind of super weapon hidden on board, he said. I saw it. Navi is analyzing the data now. The screen showed the black ships getting closer. They were perfect spheres that seemed to swallow the starlight around them. There is no time for anger, Tarl said. The void has found us, and now they know about humanity too. If we do not stop them here, they will follow your trail back to Earth. Your world will suffer the same fate as so many others before it. Jack looked at the approaching darkness, then back at the alien leader. You've dragged us into your war without asking. Now you'd better tell me exactly what we're facing and how to fight it. Tarl nodded slowly. The void consumes entire worlds. Captain. And now they are coming for all of us. The black ships of the void moved closer, perfectly round spheres that seemed to eat the light around them. On the screen in the Lumini control room, they looked like holes cut into space itself. How much time do we have? Jack asked, watching the approaching ships with growing dread. Tarl's skin pulsed with dim blue light. 1 hour, perhaps less. The void does not hurry. It does not need to. Jack turned to his crew. Tom stood with his hand on his weapon, ready for a fight even though his face showed he knew guns would be useless against such an enemy. Marcus was looking at the ship's systems, his engineer's mind already working on solutions. We need a plan, Jack said. Any ideas? Marcus stepped forward. Captain, our mining ship has specialized equipment that the Lumini don't have. We use superheated mineral dust to find valuable metals in asteroids. How does that help us? Tom asked. If we create a field of this dust around both ships, it might hide us from their sensors. It absorbs many types of scans. It's worth trying. Jack nodded. Get on it. Take whatever help you need from the Lumini engineers. He turned to Tarl. What about this weapon Tom found? Will it work against the void? Tarl was quiet for a moment. The nullifier was created by our ancestors as a last resort. It is designed to collapse reality itself around void entities, trapping them in a pocket dimension from which they cannot escape. Then let's use it, Jack said. It is not so simple, Tarl replied. The weapon requires a pilot. Someone must guide it, and the feedback from using it would destroy any Lumini who tried. You mean it's a suicide mission? Tom said flatly. Tarl's light dimmed further. Yes. Our physiology cannot withstand the energy feedback we had hoped. He stopped. You hoped what? Jack pressed. We detected something unique in human biology when we scanned your ship. Your nervous systems are more resistant to certain types of energy. We believe a human might survive long enough to properly target the nullifier. Tom stepped forward angrily. So that's why you called us. You wanted human sacrifices for your weapon. We are facing extinction, Tarl said simply. We would try anything. Jack held up his hand to stop the argument. First, let's try to hide. Then we'll talk about last resorts. Marcus, get to the prospect and prepare the dust field. Tom, go with him and prepare our engines for emergency burst. We might need to run. As Marcus and Tom left for the shuttle, Jack turned to Ellie on the comlink. Ellie, I need you to access the Lumini communication systems. Learn everything you can about these void ships and any previous encounters. Already working on it, Captain, she replied. Navi is helping. Me link with their historical records, there's a lot here. Jack turned back to Tarl. Show me the nullifier, I want to see this weapon for myself. The Lumini leader led Jack through the ship to the heavily guarded room Tom had discovered. Inside, the sphere of darkness floated in its energy field, making Jack's head hurt just by looking at it. What is it made of? Jack asked, fighting the urge to step back. It is not made of anything, Tarl explained. It is a hole in reality, a point where our universe touches others. When activated, it creates a bridge that can trap void entities, pulling them into a space between spaces. Back on the prospect, Marcus worked with the Lumini engineers to modify the mining equipment. They needed to create a dust field large enough to hide both ships. Your engines will need to operate beyond safe limits, one Lumini engineer told him. The field must be created quickly before the void is too close. Marcus nodded grimly. I can push them to 150% for a short time. It will damage the systems, but that's better than being eaten by those things. As he worked, he discovered more about the Lumini technology. This engine design is amazing, he told the alien engineer. But I don't understand why you can't outrun the void with this. The Lumini touched a panel showing Marcus a diagram. The void does not travel through space as we do. It folds space around itself. Distance means nothing to it. Then how can we escape at all? We cannot. That is why the nullifier was created. Meanwhile, Ellie had established a deeper connection with the Lumini historical database. What she found horrified her. Captain, she called over the comm, I'm sending you what Navy and I found. The void isn't just hunting the Lumini, they're systematically wiping out all advanced life in this part of the galaxy. 7 civilizations have already been destroyed completely. Jack looked at the data on his portable screen. Any weaknesses? Anything that worked against them? Nothing. That lasted, Ellie replied. One species managed to destroy a void ship by detonating their sun, but 3 more void ships came later to finish the job. They're persistent. And now humanity is on their list too, just because we answered the call, Jack said grimly. Actually, it's worse, Ellie said. The records show the void seems to prioritize new species they haven't encountered before. We're now probably at the top of their list. In another part of the Lumini ship, Tom was confronting Tarl again after learning more about the nullifier. You specifically looked for humans, Tom accused. Your distress call was designed to attract a human ship. Why? Tarl's light pulsed slowly. As I told your captain, human biology is uniquely suited to withstand the nullifier's feedback at least long enough to target it properly. How did you even know about humans in the first place? We haven't met your kind before. We have observed many species from afar. Your world has been sending radio signals into space for over 100 years. We have been listening. Before Tom could respond, an alarm sounded. Marcus's voice came over the comm system. Dust field deployed. All ships power down non-essential systems. The field works best if we're running minimal energy signatures. On the screens throughout both ships, they could see the shimmering cloud of superheated particles spreading out, surrounding them in a glittering fog that blocked normal scans. For a few minutes, it seemed to work. The void ships slowed their approach, appearing confused by the sudden disappearance of their targets. It's working, Jack said with cautious hope. But then one of the black spheres began to emit a pulse of dark energy. Where the pulse touched the dust field, the particles simply vanished, leaving a clear path. They're burning away the dust, Marcus reported, his voice tight with tension. They're moving in a grid pattern, systematically eliminating our cover. How long until they break through? Jack asked. 10 minutes, maybe less. Jack turned to Tarl. We need to prepare the nullifier. Even if we don't use it, we need to be ready. As they rushed back toward the weapon room, a terrible sound echoed through the ship. A high-pitched screech that made everyone cover their ears in pain. What is that? Jack shouted over the noise. Tarl's light had dimmed to almost nothing, a sign of extreme fear. They found us. On the main screen, they watched in horror as one of the void ships broke through the dust field. It moved directly to the Lumini vessel and attached itself to the hull. Where it touched, the ship's material began to dissolve, eaten away by the black sphere. At the same time, a smaller object detached from the main void ship and shot away from them, accelerating rapidly. What is that? Jack asked, pointing at the small object. A probe, Tarl said, his voice hollow. It carries information about new species it encounters. It's heading toward your home system. The void now knows about Earth. Jack felt cold fear grip his heart. How long until it reaches Earth? At that speed, perhaps 3 of your weeks. Jack looked at his crew, then at the dissolving section of the Lumini ship. 3 weeks. That's all the time humanity has to prepare for what's coming. He took a deep breath. Unless we stop it here. Alarms blared throughout both ships as the void continued to eat through the Lumini vessel's hull. Captain Jack watched the screen showing the damage spreading like a disease through the beautiful alien ship. We need to evacuate your people. To the Prospect, Jack told Tarl. How many can we fit, Navi? The AI's voice came through his communicator. The Prospect can hold approximately 50 additional passengers in emergency conditions, Captain. The Lumini crew numbers over 200. Jack looked at Tarl. Do you have escape pods? Yes, the alien leader replied. Enough for most of our crew, but the void will hunt them down one by one unless we stop it here. Then we need to use the nullifier, Jack said firmly. How much time until the Lumini ship is completely consumed? Navi calculated quickly. At current rate of consumption, approximately 5 hours and 43 minutes. And that probe heading to Earth? Can we catch it? Negative, Captain. It is already moving faster than the Prospect can achieve. However, at its current speed, it will take 3 weeks and 2 days to reach Earth. Jack nodded. So we have a small window to warn humanity. He turned to Tarl. Start evacuating your people. Anyone who can't fit on the escape pods comes to the Prospect. As the Lumini crew began to evacuate, Jack gathered his team in a quiet corner of the control room. Marcus, Tom, and Ellie, via communicator, listened as he outlined what they knew. The void is consuming the Lumini ship. A probe is heading toward Earth. We have the nullifier weapon that might stop the void, but using it requires someone to pilot it, likely a one-way trip. The Lumini planned this, Tom said angrily. They wanted us to sacrifice ourselves for their weapon. Maybe, Jack admitted. But right now, Earth is in danger. That's what matters. Marcus had been quiet, thinking deeply. Captain, what if we didn't need a human pilot? What if we could use Navi? Everyone looked at him in surprise. Explain, Jack said. The nullifier needs a consciousness to guide it, right? Navi is an artificial intelligence. If we connected Navi's quantum processing core to the nullifier, maybe it could target the weapon without a human pilot. Ellie's voice came through the comm. I've asked Navi about this possibility. Navi calculates a 12% chance of preserving core programming through the process. Those aren't good odds, Tom said. Better than certain death for all of us. Marcusy replied. And better than asking someone to sacrifice themselves. Jack considered this. Navy, are you willing to try this? I am programmed to protect human life, Captain, the AI responded. If there is a chance to save Earth, I must take it. Then let's do it. Marcus, work with the Lumini scientists to rig the connection. We don't have much time. For the next hour, Marcus and several Lumini engineers worked frantically to create an interface between Navi's core systems and the nullifier. The work was complex, combining two completely different technologies that were never meant to work together. Meanwhile, Jack helped coordinate the evacuation. The Lumini escape pods launched one after another, heading away from the void ships. Most of the aliens had evacuated, with 30 remaining to board the Prospect. The interface is ready, Marcus reported finally. But we'll need to physically connect Navi's core to the nullifier. Someone needs to carry it into the chamber. I'll do it, Jack said. The plan was set. They would evacuate everyone to the Prospect and the remaining escape pods. Tom would pilot the mining ship to a safe distance. Marcus would prepare Navi's core for transfer. Jack would carry the core to the nullifier and make the final connection. As they prepared to leave the Lumini ship, a terrible sound filled the corridors, the shriek of tearing metal. The void had eaten through to a new section of the ship. We need to hurry, Tarl warned. Once it reaches the central core, the ship will begin to collapse. They rushed toward the docking bay where the Prospect waited. The remaining Lumini were boarding the human ship, their lights pulsing with fear. Marcus carried Navi's core, a small glowing cube that contained the AI's primary systems. Suddenly, black tendrils shot through a nearby wall. They moved like living things searching the corridor. One tendril touched a Lumini, who screamed as his body began to dissolve into black dust. Run! Jack shouted. They sprinted down the corridor, the tendrils pursuing them. Tom fired his weapon at them, but the energy pulses passed straight through the black material without effect. One tendril wrapped around Tom's leg, pulling him toward the wall that was now melting into a pool of darkness. Jack grabbed Tom's arms, pulling against the tendril's strength. Let go, Captain, Tom yelled. Get to the ship. Not leaving you behind, Jack grunted, straining against the pull. Marcus put down Navi's core and grabbed a piece of broken metal from the deteriorating ship. He swung it at the tendril, which surprisingly split apart where the metal hit it. Tom fell forward, free of its grip. But as Jack helped Tom up, he felt something cold touch his back. Looking down, he saw a small spot of black ichor on his suit. It was spreading slowly, eating through the material toward his skin. Captain? Marcus noticed the spreading blackness. Don't worry about it, Jack said, picking up Navi's core. Get to the ship. They reached the Prospect, just as another section of the Lumini ship collapsed. The airlock closed behind them, and Tom rushed to the control room to detach from the dying alien vessel. In the medical bay, Ellie examined the black spot on Jack's back. It had reached his skin and was spreading into his blood vessels, creating dark lines that crept slowly toward his heart. How bad? Jack asked, seeing her worried face. I don't know, she admitted. It's like nothing I've ever seen. It's changing your cells. Marcus entered the medical bay. The Lumini scientists say it's void essence. They've seen it before. It will spread through your system and... He couldn't finish the sentence. How long? Jack asked simply. Hours, maybe less, before it reaches vital organs. Jack nodded, accepting this news with surprising calm. Then we have no choice. I'll pilot the nullifier myself. Captain, no, Ellie protested. I'm already infected, Jack said, standing up. This way my death means something. Navi can help guide me, but I need to be the one to do this. The Abi Prospect had pulled away from the Lumini ship, but remained close enough for a shuttle trip back. The void ships were still attached to the alien vessel, consuming it piece by piece. The nullifier is still functional, Tarl reported, but we must act quickly before the void discovers its purpose. Jack looked at his crew, his friends. Tom, you're captain now. Get these people to safety and warn Earth. Marcus, make sure Navi's core is ready. Ellie, he took her hand. Thank you for always finding the right words. Tears filled Ellie's eyes. This isn't fair. Few things are, Jack replied with a small smile. But humans don't give up, even when the odds are impossible. That's what makes us different. He picked up Navi's core and headed to the shuttle bay. From the comm system, Navi spoke. I have calculated the optimal targeting sequence, Captain. I will guide you through the process. As Jack boarded the shuttle, Tarl approached him. Your sacrifice will not be forgotten, human. You save not just your people, but many worlds. Jack nodded. Just make sure it counts. The shuttle door closed and Jack looked one last time at his crew through the window. The dark lines had spread further up his neck, and he could feel a cold numbness creeping through his body. Ready, Navi? He asked as the shuttle launched toward the dying Lumini ship. Ready, Captain, the AI replied. If I don't survive this process, it has been an honor serving with you. Jack smiled despite the pain. The honor was mine, old friend. Let's go make some history. The shuttle flew toward the massive alien ship, now half consumed by the black spheres of the void. Inside, Jack carried humanity's last hope, and perhaps its first warning to a universe filled with ancient, hungry predators. Humans fight back. Jack guided the small shuttle through the debris field that had once been parts of the magnificent Lumini ship. The black lines of the void's infection had spread up his neck and onto his face. His left arm was growing numb, but he pushed forward, focused on the mission. Approaching docking point, Navi announced from the core that sat in Jack's lap. The nullifier chamber is still intact, but the void will detect our presence soon. Then we'd better be quick, Jack said, his voice raspy as the infection spread. The shuttle docked with the remains of the alien ship. Jack put on a breathing mask. Parts of the Lumini vessel had lost atmosphere, and moved carefully into the empty corridors. The ship felt dead, the beautiful living walls now dark and still. 200 meters ahead, Navi guided him. The chamber should be sealed against the void's intrusion. As Jack walked, he could feel the void's presence all around him. Walls had been eaten away, leaving strange, perfect holes that seemed to lead into absolute nothingness. The ship groaned and shifted as more of its structure was consumed. How are the others? Jack asked, wanting to think about something besides his failing body. The Prospect has moved to a safe distance, Navy replied. All Lumini escape pods have cleared the danger zone. Tom is preparing for emergency lightspeed jump once our mission is complete. Jack nodded. Good. They reached the sealed door of the nullifier chamber. It was still guarded by the Lumini security system, but Tarl had given Jack the codes. He pressed his hand against the panel, and the massive door slid open. Inside, the nullifier floated in its containment field, a perfect sphere of darkness that hurt Jack's eyes to look at directly. The room hummed with power, the last functioning system on the dying ship. How do we do this? Jack asked, approaching the control panel. The interface Marcus created needs to be connected to both my core and the nullifier's control systems, Navi explained. Then you must initiate the targeting sequence and release the containment field. Jack set Navi's core on the main console and connected it using the interface Marcus had built. The core glowed brighter as it linked with the alien technology. Connection established, Navi announced. I am accessing the nullifier systems now. It is remarkable technology, far beyond human understanding. Can you make it work? Jack asked, leaning against the console as a wave of pain shot through him. Yes. The targeting system requires conscious direction. I will guide it, but you must be the one to release it, Captain. Suddenly the ship shook violently, On a nearby screen, Jack could see one of the void ships moving toward their position. "They've detected us," Navi said. "We have minutes at most." Jack moved to the main control panel where Tarl had shown him the release mechanism. It required a living being's touch, a final safety measure. "What happens when we activate it?" Jack asked. "According to the Lumini data, the nullifier creates a pocket dimension, a space between spaces. It will pull in everything within its targeting range, collapsing that section of reality and sealing it away forever." Jack took a deep breath. "And what happens to us?" Navi was silent for a moment. "The Lumini records are unclear. No one has ever survived to report what it feels like." "Well," Jack said with a weak smile, "we're about to find out." He established a communication link with the prospect. Ellie's face appeared on the screen, worried and afraid. "Captain, the void ships are moving toward your position." "We're ready, Ellie," Jack said calmly. "Navi and I are about to activate the nullifier. You need to get as far away as possible." "We're at minimum safe distance according to Tarl," she replied. "Jack, Her voice broke. "It's okay," he said. "Tell the others it's been an honor, and make sure Earth is ready for what's coming." "We will," she promised, tears in her eyes. Jack turned to Navi's core. "Ready, old friend?" "Targeting systems locked on all 3 void ships," Navi confirmed. "Ready when you are, Captain." Jack placed his hand on the release mechanism. The ship shook again, more violently this time. The void was getting closer. "Let's show these cosmic horrors what humans can do," Jack said. He pressed down firmly and the mechanism clicked into place. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the nullifier's containment field began to pulse. The sphere of darkness grew larger, its edges becoming unstable. "Nullifier activated," Navi announced. "Targeting sequence initiated." Jack felt a strange pulling sensation, as if his very atoms were being tugged in impossible directions. The nullifier was now a swirling vortex of darkness that filled half the chamber. "It's beautiful," Jack whispered, watching patterns of light and shadow dance at the edges of the absolute darkness. "Captain, your vital signs are fluctuating," Navi said with concern. "The process is affecting you at a quantum level." "Keep it on target," Jack ordered, feeling his consciousness beginning to fragment. The black infection lines were glowing, now resonating with the nullifier's energy. Through the ship's exterior cameras, Jack could see the void ships being pulled toward them. They seemed to be struggling, trying to escape the pull of the nullifier, but the gravity-like force was too strong. 30 seconds to complete containment. Navi counted down. Jack's vision was splitting now, as if he was seeing from multiple places at once. He could see the prospect at a safe distance. He could see Earth, though he knew it was impossible. He could see strange landscapes that no human had ever witnessed. "What's happening to me?" he asked, his voice sounding distant to his own ears. "The void infection in your system is interacting with the nullifier's field," Navi explained. "Your consciousness is becoming entangled with the pocket dimension we're creating." The first void ship made contact with the nullifier and began to break apart, its perfect black surface cracking to reveal a strange, shifting matter underneath. The other ships were being dragged in now too, unable to escape. 10 seconds, Navi announced. "Captain, it's been an honor serving with you." Jack smiled, though he wasn't sure if his physical body was still capable of the expression. "Goodbye, Navi. Take care of them." The nullifier reached its peak power. The darkness expanded to fill the entire chamber. Jack felt himself coming, apart and coming together at the same time. His last thought was of Earth, of home, of the strange journey that had brought him here. Then there was a silent flash that somehow created a new star where none had existed before. And then nothing. 3 weeks later, the life pods from both ships were picked up by an Earth military vessel that had responded to their distress call. The crew of the Prospect, minus their captain, along with the Lumini survivors, were brought back to Earth. At first, the governments of Earth were skeptical of the alien threat, but when astronomical observations confirmed that several distant, Stars had vanished exactly as described in the Lumini records. Preparations for defense began in earnest. The Lumini, now refugees, offered their advanced technology in exchange for sanctuary. They helped humanity upgrade their defenses and detection systems, preparing for the day when the void would return. Scientists also discovered more about the death word, the quantum signal that had drawn the void in the first place. Elements of the technology were found in experimental Earth communication systems, which were immediately shut down. 6 months later, as the first line of Earth defense stations neared completion, sensors detected a small ship approaching the solar system. It was unlike anything seen before. Parts of it resembled the Prospect, while others clearly used Lumini technology. Defense ships surrounded it, ready to attack, but held their fire when they received a transmission in a familiar voice. Earth. Defense Command. This is Jack Reynolds. I'd like to come home, please. When the ship docked at the space station, the crew of the Prospect was there to meet it. But the man who emerged was both Jack and not Jack. His body seemed normal, but his eyes held stars in them. When he moved, he sometimes left trails in the air, as if he existed in multiple places at once. How? Ellie asked when she could finally speak. I don't really understand it myself, Jack said, his voice sometimes echoing slightly before his lips moved. The nullifier didn't destroy me. It changed me. I exist partly outside normal space-time now. I can see the void's movements across the galaxy. In the following weeks, Jack revealed what he had learned during his transformation. The void was not random or natural. It was an ancient, coordinated entity that harvested evolved civilizations when they reached a certain level of advancement. The probe had been destroyed in the nullifier's blast, but Jack knew more would come. Earth had perhaps 2 years to prepare. The scientists studying Jack's condition made a breakthrough. Using his unique perception and the Lumini technology, they found a way to create smaller, more controllable versions of the nullifier. In a meeting with Earth's leaders, Tarl expressed shock at humanity's response to the threat. In our thousands of years of history, no species has ever considered hunting the void, the Lumini said. All have only tried to hide or flee. That's the difference, Jack said, his starry eyes gleaming. You called for help using a word that brings death, but where you saw only doom, we saw a challenge. That's what humans do. We take death words and turn them into battle cries. 1 year later, the newly constructed warship Defiance prepared for its maiden voyage with Jack as its navigator. As the ship's engines powered up, Jack sent a final message to Earth. The void has been consuming civilizations for millions of years. They've never had to hunt something that hunts back. Let's show them what that feels like. The Defiance disappeared into the darkness between stars, carrying humanity's answer to the universe's oldest predator. The hunt had begun.